Okay, minasan, today we're gonna discuss who could it actually be, the disaster of the latest arc of Kamen Rider Geats. It is Imposter, aka Among Us in DGP. I really did not expect Yuya Takahashi to make this reference, but I'm really happy that he actually did this because, not gonna lie, after two arcs of the same thing, almost similar concept of the DGP, I'm really glad that we actually got a really refreshing tag on the DGP itself. It adds text, it adds concept, it adds new possibility, and not just the best player wins the game, but the most popular player to win the game. Like, even if like that character is not the most popular in the show, but if he turns out to be the disaster, he can still become the disaster itself at the end of the game. So before we speculate who could it actually be, we need to understand who this disaster actually is. Okay, we need to know a few things about the disaster. So the first thing we know about the disaster is that they have been contacted, they have been approached before the game even started. And the reason why episode 17 started off like how it started off, like immediately we got introduced to the player, to the rider entering into the picture itself. Like, the reason why that happened is because they don't want to show us what they did and how did they actually receive their driver and their ID call, because if we actually see how it was being done, then it is quite obvious that who actually is the disaster. So the disaster has been approached before the game even started, before they actually did their character introduction and all those stuff. So that is the first thing that we know about the disaster. So the second thing we know about the disaster is the job. The job of the disaster is to sabotage other rider. So we need to keep a closer look on everyone, like who could it actually be that is trying to sabotage one another and all those stuff. Or maybe the disaster would not even do anything to sabotage other rider, because of the third thing we know regarding the disaster. The disaster actually can win, can become the disaster without the popularity contest, because if they couldn't guess who actually is the disaster at the end of the game is gonna win the entire DGP, and thus becoming the latest disaster, the desire god itself. So that is three things that we know about the disaster, and from there we can actually speculate on who could it actually be, the disaster, or not disaster, the disaster of this latest arc of the DGP itself. So very interesting stuff. I would say it is definitely not gonna be Lopo, because Lopo is the wolf. If we actually take into consideration of the animal that was given to them, I would say Lopo and even Sparrow is like the least possible candidate in this case, because I would say giving them the role of the disaster is a little bit too predictable, a little bit too not nanny the F enough. So me personally, as a crazy fan of plot twists, I would really love to see that the disaster could actually be Neon Kurama. Let me explain. I actually talked a little bit about this in the episodic breakdown of Kamen Rider Geats that I make, but let me explain more why do I think Neon Kurama could actually be the disaster. First of all, her ID call. She is the cat, and in pop culture reference, pop culture portrayal of cat, it is usually portrayed as a very, unpredictable. You do not know what the cat is thinking. You do not know what is the real intention of a cat. It can be like very flirty with you, but secretly she wants something else. That is what we see from DC Catwoman and even Silver Cat, Black Cat or Silver Cat in the Marvel comics itself. So both of them are being portrayed as very flirtatious, like they can act like they are very interested in something, but secretly they just want something else. So this could actually be what Neon Kurama is doing in this latest arc of the DGP itself. But then again, I could be wrong. Another possible reason on why I think Neon Kurama is the disaster is that she is in fact the one that contacted the game producer. She has direct contact to the game producer and her father based on what we know, is the one of the sponsors of the DGP itself. So I felt like most of the characters don't really have this information. I don't think Sparrow have this information. The only person that actually have information on this entire thing is Ukyo S itself. So I'm not so sure whether or not Ukyo S is just gonna take down Neon Kurama just like that. It's like, hey, you are the disaster, something like that. If that actually happened, it's gonna became a really big plot twist, because one of the main girls of the show actually betrayed the Rider team, and this is kind of like typical Yuya Takahashi story writing. We always see like one of the girl betraying the Rider, just like how Poppy betrayed the X8 team, something like that. So this is really possible for Neon Kurama to become the disaster in this latest arc of the DGP itself. You could say that she is betraying the Rider, betraying other people, but she is, I'm not gonna lie, I don't think she's gonna be deemed as a bad character, as an evil character, because she is just playing the role that she was given. Now that we know that this game main purpose is to entertain the audience and not to really save the world itself, so obviously they're gonna play the role that has been given to them. If their role is to become the disaster, they're gonna put their best effort to become the disaster. Okay, so that is something that I felt like a lot of us really need to think about and really consider before we actually make any conclusion on who could it actually be the disaster itself. But here, after proposing the idea that it could actually be Neon Kurama, I felt like there is another person that a lot of people that haven't watched the movie would not actually consider to be the disaster, and that is Sakurai Keiwa. So for those who do not know, a little bit of spoilers for the latest movie of Kamen Rider Geats X Revised Winter Movie Battle Royale. For those who haven't watched that movie, and me personally haven't watched that movie, but I heard a little bit of spoilers saying that in that movie we actually get to meet a dark side Keiwa or something like that, because when Keiwa actually went against Ryuga and went against Daiji, both Ryuga and Kagero actually talks about how inside of Keiwa there is something of an inner demon and a dark side waiting to come out, something like that. So I have a suspicion that maybe Sakurai Keiwa actually have a little bit of dark side energy inside of him. He has kind of like bipolar disorder. We do not know how the show is gonna explain it to us, but there is a huge possibility that we're gonna see an evil Keiwa, and he might actually be a participant of the DGP itself that he didn't even know him. He could actually be the disaster and he didn't even know. You know, like one of the biggest plot twists ever comes from lying, like not only lying to your enemy but also lying to your friends. And the worst thing, the biggest nani the F thing is lying to yourself. Like if we actually watch one of I forgot what was that movie actually called. I think it is Fight Club. Yeah, if you watch Fight Club, at the end of the day, I mean, like that movie was released a long time ago, guys, but if you watch that movie, at the end of the day you'll realize that the main character is actually the same character that he idolized, like that he wants to be. You know, like he always see this person that runs the Fight Club and he always wanted to be that person, but at the end of the day he realized he is that person also. Maybe Sakurai Keiwa is gonna go through something similar, that he's gonna have a dark side that he needs to conquer, he needs to tame, something like that. We do not know how the story is gonna go, but Sakurai Keiwa, he is Tycoon, he is Tanuki of the story. So when you actually go and Google search Tanuki and just look up his story about Tanuki and all that stuff, Tanuki is famous for mischievous deed, for being a prankster and all those stuff. So I have a feeling that even though we see that Sakurai Keiwa having a dark side, he's not gonna turn a full-on villain. He's not gonna become like Ryuga villain. He's not gonna become like very bad guy, but he's just gonna be a prankster or something like that. I would say it's kind of similar to a lovable villain, a little bit kind of like Kagero or something like that. So if Keiwa actually have that dark side once again, I really hope that they actually figure out a way to properly explain why this exists and not just give it out to some bullshit explanation and all the stuff. But it's like, it's kind of funny that the system never actually hinted at us like, hey, what is going on? Like is Kewa okay? Like we don't actually see the system mentioning about another identity of Kewa at all. So maybe there is a huge possibility that Kewa is affected by something we do not know, but this is really interesting stuff. Tanuki usually was being portrayed as maybe like as a prankster, like I said, but another thing that what they are being portrayed as is having a new huge nutsack, something like that. So I don't think they are gonna portray that in the show itself, but the huge nutsack was often used to as a barrier, as a shield, as a raincoat, or whatever they want to do it with. So this is really interesting. Okay, so if Kewa is in fact the disaster without him knowing, that will actually break the game itself, because like no one knows. It's like Kewa is gonna win the game if this is the case. It's like he convinced everyone that he actually is not the disaster. He is gonna prove himself. He's gonna like just do everything in his power to say I am not the disaster, and boom, at the end of the day, it has been revealed that he is in fact the disaster. That I felt like everyone is gonna lose their shit. Is that what is going on? And that is also gonna be really interesting as well. So the reason why I don't think Ukyo S is gonna be the disaster at all is because it is too obvious. He's the kitsune, he's the one that lies all the time, he's always do the con thing. We do not know what is that, but really amazing episode, and I really enjoy this new mechanic that they have given to the fandom. Because just imagine, like, every single week the fandom is gonna start to speculate who actually is the disaster, and there's gonna be a conversation surrounding it. There's gonna be a lot of things surrounding it, but I'm just really excited to see who is gonna win this round of the DGP itself. So that is all from me. Hope you enjoy what you see here. If you like what you see, you know what to do. Henshin that red button into a silver one, and I'll be seeing you guys in the future. Goodbye.